So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to your eighth session. Today, we'll be covering tenses. Now, before we get going, just a quick check. We're getting echo from. Okay, now it's gone. All right. Now, before we get going, just a quick word about all the different tenses you could see. There are many tenses in English, right? I mean, at least 12, right? At least 12. But some of them are more important than others from an exam perspective. So we'll be very clear about the fact that certain things that we'll do today may not be that important, and some of them will actually be much, much more important. Now, just to give you a broad idea about what we'll be doing today, I'd like you to take a look at these possible categories. So, simple, continuous, and perfect. These three, and then these three: past, present, and future. Now, if you combine these three, right, what do you get? Simple past, simple present, simple future. You get past continuous, present continuous, future continuous, and you get past perfect, present perfect, and future perfect. So, nine over here. And of course, there are others as well, but again, those are really not particularly important. Now, the point that I'm getting at is some of these are more important. Which ones are more important? Well, firstly, the simple past is important. The simple past is not difficult, but it's just important simply because of the fact that most of your GMAT SC questions are actually in the simple past. So that's something we need to always be on the lookout for. So simple past is just simply the most common tense that you're going to see on your GMAT exam. Then there is the simple present. The simple present is also important. So let's write that down. Simple present. And then you have the past perfect and the present perfect. Now, please remember these four. So everything else that we do today, right? We could even end up just saying that we'll just deprioritize those things. As far as the GMAT is concerned, we're basically looking, practically speaking, at four tenses that are tested. The others, maybe you'll see them, maybe you won't see them, but the point is that they seem to test a relatively small subset of tenses. All right, so that's one thing, right? Where our focus should be when we're looking at tenses. It should not be spread across all possible tenses. It should be highly focused on these four tenses. Now, another quick point. In English, tenses, sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that tenses are kind of, let's say, discrete categories, or let's say non overlapping categories. They think that tenses are non overlapping. But actually, tenses can overlap. And as we discussed today, for example, if you want to show the future tense, right? You can, I mean, if you want to refer to a future time, you can use the future tense, of course, but you can also use the present tense, for example, right? So there is a bit of overlap in tenses. So just keep that in mind whenever you think about tenses in general. Don't expect that okay, only one tense can ever be used for only one situation. Okay? All right. Now, okay, so let me get all of this out and let's immediately dive into examples and usage for different tenses. Firstly, we've got the simple past. Now, the simple past, I want you to visualize it like this. The simple past could be for something that happened in the past, like one time, or it could be something that happened over a period of time at multiple points, or it could be something that is generally true or generally true in the past. Now, let's take an example of something that just happened once. So, for example, if you say, I attended the meeting, right? I attended, past tense. It's just something that happened once. Another example could be, he took a great picture of the Niagara Falls, right? He took just once. Another one, they won the series last year. Again, it's just one thing happening at one time in the past. Now comes a slightly okay. So let me just get a quick check. This is obviously very basic usage, but is everyone comfortable with the first one, that a one-time event in the past for the simple past? Very basic, I know, but let me just get a yes from everyone just to see everyone's on the same page. Okay, okay. Now the next one is for something that's generally true. Now I want you to look at the sentence up on the screen, which says Galileo proved that the Earth revolved around the sun. Now, some of you may have already studied that it is the simple present which is used for mm, facts or general truths. But this sentence is also correct. Galileo proved that the Earth revolved around the sun. Now, what's happening over here? Well, the Earth obviously still revolves around the sun, right? So some of us may think, oh, look, we've got to use the present tense. But remember, there's a little bit of overlap. It's not as if it's only the present tense that can be used over here, right? So just to be very clear, we can say Galileo proved that the Earth revolved around the sun. Now, if you get another option which says that the Earth revolves around the sun, maybe you're looking at a meaning call. But my advice to you would be look for other issues, look for other level one, level two issues before trying to take a call on past or present in this sort of situation. Because, when you say Galileo proved, proved is in the past. So it's actually very normal to say Galileo proved that the earth revolved around the sun. So let's quickly summarize. The earth revolved around the sun. Galileo proved that, or Galileo proved that the earth revolves around the sun. Both are equally correct. There's no preference. We cannot remove one and say that, yeah, no, it has to be the present tense. We must look for other issues, and then only finally, if it really comes down to it, maybe decide on the present tense. Quick check, is everyone comfortable with the second one? Sometimes people are a little uncomfortable with that. All right, okay, multiple yeses. Awesome. Now, another use of the past tense is something that went on for a period of time in the past. For example, if you say she studied finance for many years, um, she studied finance for many years. It's not a one-time thing. It went on over a period of time. But again, nothing too complicated. So let's move on to the next one. Swami Vivekananda stayed Swami Vivekananda stayed in Mysore in 1892, right? So stayed over there, past tense. Nothing complicated, exactly what we would expect. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is important for us. This is the usage of the past to talk about the future that is still in the past. So, in case that sounded a little weird, basically we call this future in the past. Future in the past means you are talking about a time that is later than the past time, but that time is still in the past itself. So, if I said in 1893, Mahatma Gandhi, the man who would one day lead India to freedom, was forcibly removed from a train in South Africa. If I say that, it's correct. But if I change that would lead to will lead, right? Let's see what that'll sound like. The man who would one day lead India to freedom versus the man who will one day lead India to freedom. Take a second, think about it, let me know. Why can't I say will? Remember, the man who would one day lead India, the man who will one day lead India. Abhishek is saying will is incorrect, but think about it. Unmute and tell me why. I'm more interested in your reasoning actually, not just the correct answer.
So because the event has already occurred.
Okay, good, good. Manu, go ahead.
I think will gives a degree of certainty that this will definitely happen, whereas would is
Ah,
uh,
that is a very important point, but just hold on to that. I'll come back to it. Rahul, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Will implies that the event will happen in
Mhm.
the future, rather than would imply that it has already happened.
Ah, good. So Abhishek and Rahul have kind of latched on to the intended meaning over here. Manu, we'll have to slightly change our position on this. So, wood can be used in multiple ways, right? Now,
Yes.
wood, yeah. So, wood, and this is something we'll discuss on the left hand side. So, when we discuss tenses, once we finish tenses, when we get to other constructions, we'll look at other uses of wood. But just keep this in mind: not every wood that you see implies some degree of this word uncertainty. When we come to the left hand side, we'll discuss why that word uncertainty is also wrong, right? So
Okay.
what a lot of people say, it's just completely wrong, right? We'll discuss why. But for now, the way I want you to look at this is, Mahatma Gandhi, the man who will one day lead India to freedom, means India has not yet received freedom, and he will one day do it. He will one day lead India. But if we say the man who would go on to lead India to freedom, right? It means in the future from the perspective of 1893,
Yes.
right? But in the past from the perspective of now,
Right.
right? That's the would over here. So this sort of would is used to indicate the future in the past. That's literally how you can remember it: future in the past,
All right.
right? Perfect. All right. Now, past facts, opinions, generalizations, not too important. Let's just skip past this. Past habits, again, this is very, very easy. The example sentence over here: we played football every day when we were young, right? It can't get much simpler than this. We played football every day. Yeah, absolutely. Simple past. Nothing new or nothing strange or unexpected about this. Okay. Now let's get to the simple present. Now, let me just make this slightly smaller so that it fits on the screen. If you're facing issues with seeing the text size, please let me know. I will bump the zoom level back up. But yeah, all right. So, facts, opinions, generalizations, things that are generally or always true. So, the present tense can be used for things that are facts, things that are always true, things that are generally true. Um, with just one small point over here, when you use the simple present tense, right? When we say things that are generally true or things that are always true, we mean in the context of whatever you are saying. I mean, whatever the author is saying. It doesn't literally mean from the beginning of the universe till the end of the universe, right? So, for example, even a very general statement like the earth revolves around the sun, I think you would agree it's not as if the earth always revolved around the sun, or it's not as if the earth will always revolve around the sun, right? Far into the future, the earth is not going to revolve around the sun. The sun is going to eat the earth up. At least that's what I read in a newspaper article recently. The point is that we are a little practical about this. We recognize that when we say things that are generally or always true, we mean in the context of whatever conversation you are having at that moment. So if your context is billions of years, sure, okay. If your context is a couple of years, that's also fine. For example, if you say, I walk every day, right? I walk every day does not mean from the beginning of the universe till the end of the universe. It just means in some time period that you are thinking about. I walk every day could be just the last 2 months, right? So just keep that in mind. The simple present does not literally always mean from the beginning of the universe to the end of the universe. It just means some time period that you are interested in. Okay. Another one, habits or regular occurrences. What's the example over here? Yeah, the walks example. Yeah, she walks around the campus after lunch. She walks around campus. That's a habit. Another example, professors are approached almost every day by students. Now, quick question over here. What is are approached and what is are and what is approached? As in, what type of words are we looking at? Are approached. Okay, Abhishek's got an answer. Are approached is a verb. Approached is a past participle. Good. And are, linking verb. Hmm. Ankit is now saying helping verb. Abhishek, what do you think? Feel free to unmute.
Yes, it's helping verb.
Very good. That is correct. So are is a linking verb only when it is used alone. All right. Um, okay, yeah. Now the next one, I'm gonna check whether you guys are comfortable with this. It says the simple present can be used as to provide a description of artists and their works, right? So, for example, let's say you're talking about a book. We can say in her debut book, the author describes traders as gamblers. Now, I want you to imagine a scenario in which this book came out in 1980, right? So let's assume that you have this additional information that the book came out and it was published in 1980. Can I say in her debut book, the author describes traders as gamblers? Just your gut instinct over here. This is not a question checking whether you're right or wrong. This is just your gut instinct. If the book came out in 1980, does it sound okay to you to say the author describes traders as gamblers? Are you comfortable using the present tense for something that came out in 1980? Or why stop at 1980? Let's talk about Shakespeare, like hundreds of years ago. Shakespeare describes X as Y. Is it okay to say that? Okay. Ankit says it sounds a little off. Rahul says it sounds okay. Manu says it sounds okay. Okay. I think Abhishek is still thinking. Um, okay, Abhishek saying that it sounds okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. This is correct, right? So you can use the simple present tense to talk about something that's happening in a book, or just a work of art. That's absolutely fine. But an important point to remember over here is the past is also fine, right? So you can say in her debut book the author described traders as gamblers. This is also absolutely okay. There is no real preference between these two. Both are appropriate. All right. Now, the simple present can also be used, as we were discussing earlier, for something that's going to happen. It's something, basically the future, like the near future. For example, the example over here says the train leaves tomorrow morning. The train leaves tomorrow morning. So what's happening? Simple present for the future. Most of you are probably going to be comfortable with the way this sounds, so that should not be a problem. But I don't know whether the GMAT will test you on this, so I don't want to spend any extra time over here. And from your side also, don't worry too much about using the simple present to refer to the future. Just be aware of it, but there's no particular reason for you to worry about this or think about this being an important use of the simple present. All right. Now, one last thing. The simple present can also be used within time clauses in future sentences. So let's take a future sentence. We will leave the office. We will leave the office, right? We will leave the office is talking about the future. But now let's attach a time clause to it. A time clause is just a dependent clause that starts with when. So we will leave the office when. And now I want you to complete the sentence. We will leave the office when the work is over, or when the work will be over. We will leave the office when the work will be over. We will leave the office when the work is over. Which one sounds better to you? Again, remember, not testing you. Which one sounds better? Okay, Rahul is saying is over. Ankit is okay. Abhishek is saying will. Ankit is saying is. Rahul is saying is. Okay. Manu, feel free to unmute if Ujali is saying is fair enough. Ujali, just quick check. Connection, is it better now?
Yeah, I just have to.
Oh, okay. I think at least you're able to hear me, which is good. Okay, and Manu's also going with this. Fair enough. Good. Manu saying both sound okay. Got it. So my recommendation over here is don't use the future. Don't use the future in the time clause. So don't say when the work will be over. Just go for the present tense. So I understand that we say this or we use this in this particular way in many cases, but just the correct usage is actually the present tense over there. It's not the future tense. All right. Now, uh, what else? What else? Yeah. Um, the next example that you see over here, if the company's stock price falls again, you'll see the sentence is actually in the future tense, right? What I mean by the sentence is in the future tense. I should be clearer. The independent clause is in the future tense, right? The will recommend, to be very specific, the will recommend verb is in the future tense. But I'd like you to focus on the other verb. What is the other verb? Good. I've got multiple answers over here. False. Now, false is present tense. And this is a pattern that we need to watch out for. Present tense in the conditional clause and future tense in the result. Don't worry about this. We'll come back to this when we look at conditional statements, hypothetical conditionals. That will be on the left-hand side of our discussion. Don't worry about this, but just remember this pattern. We'll just come back to it in a few minutes. Okay. Now, future tense is not particularly important. We won't spend too much time on it. But very simply, future tense can be used to talk about something like a one-time event in the future, something that'll go on for period of time in the future, or occur at regular intervals in the future. It's exactly what you would expect. Let's take a couple of examples. The auditor will submit the report tomorrow morning. Great, will submit. It'll happen later. The price of solar panels will fall once production increases, right? So again, over here, this is the normal way to say it. You would not normally say the price of solar panels will fall once production will increase. Normally, you would just say production increases. All right. Now, the next set, again, we're going to go very quickly over. So the next set is continuous tenses. Now, till now, what have we done? We've looked at the simple tenses: simple past, simple present, simple future. Continuous tenses are not particularly important for your GMAT, but let's quickly talk about how the continuous tenses are formed. The continuous tenses always use a present participle, always. And that present participle will be preceded by a helping verb. Now, that helping verb could be past, right? It could be present, or you might find a will over there. So, for example, the past continuous would be something like was talking. So was is the past form and talking is the present participle. Present continuous will be am talking, are talking, is talking. So the present form plus talking. And future will be talking, for example, or might be, may be talking, like that. So forming the continuous is easy. Let's go through some of the use cases for the continuous. But again, please remember, this is deprioritized. We're discussing it because we want to be complete. But honestly speaking, this is not particularly important for your GMAT. Okay, past continuous, past action that was happening at some time in the past. So let's take a couple of examples. The central bank was printing new currency notes when the news was announced. So there is some point of time in the past, the announcement, the news announcement, and the central bank was printing new currency notes when that event happened. So it was an ongoing process in the past at some past point. The second one, she was having a coffee when the results were declared. Again, some ongoing action at some point in the past. That is the past continuous. Now, present continuous. The present continuous can be used for current ongoing actions. This is, in fact, what we would normally want for something that is happening literally right now. So, for example, he is walking or he is taking the GMAT. These things are happening right now. You would not normally say, oh, I am walking if you are not actually walking right now. Similarly, if you're not taking the GMAT right now, you would not normally say something like, I am taking the GMAT. So, present continuous for current actions. Now, over here, one quick point. Obviously, this kind of follows from what we've already discussed. The simple present is not a good fit for current actions. Now, you don't have to worry about this. Just from your normal ear, the way it sounds, you would know what we're talking about over here. Small example. Would you say I am taking the GMAT if you're performing a current action, or would you say I take the GMAT? Quick check. Take or taking? Right, there we go. Manu saying taking, Abhishek is saying taking, Rahul, Ankit, Ujali. For a current action, I am taking the GMAT or I take exactly. So don't worry about this. You guys already know this, right? So although it is tested sometimes, the answer or getting to the answer is super easy if you're talking about a current action. It's got to be present continuous. It cannot be the simple present for an actual current action that is happening right now. Simple present is usually something that happens over a period of time. It's generally true, as we discussed. All right. Now, the simple present can also be used for things that are happening, but not maybe exactly right now. So, for example, if you say the value of the rupee is falling, right now, you know that the value of the rupee is generally falling. It's not as if, for example, let's say all the currency markets are closed, right? It's like the dead of night, currency markets are closed, and there is no movement happening in the value of the currency, right? So maybe you could just say, there's nothing changing right now, but generally speaking, the value of the rupee is falling. Another example could be something like she's working on her SOP, right? Now, if you say she's working on a SOP, it could mean generally, like in the current time frame, she's working on a SOP. But right now, she may be taking the GMAT or she may be doing something else, like exactly right now. But generally speaking, you can say she's working on a SOP. Or you can say she's working on a SOP right now if you want to be very clear about the fact that it's happening at this exact moment. Um, Current temporary behavior, again, going with the general theme of things, um, uh, we're talking about situations in which things are not generally true, but they may have been true for a period of time. So, what you can see is temporary past behavior, current temporary behavior. She was being rude, she is being rude, right? So, she was being rude would mean temporary behavior in the past, she is being rude would mean current temporary behavior. It's different from saying she is rude or she was rude. So, was rude would be more like a one time thing or a general habit. Anyway, not particularly important. Let's just move on. Future continues. Future action going at some other time in the future. I will be studying for the GMAT for most of next month. I will be studying. That means some process will happen in the future next month. I will be studying for the GMAT when my parents get back. So I probably am not studying right now, but I will be in the process of studying later when my parents get back. Okay, so that was not particularly important, but now please tune in again because now we're on the perfect tenses. As we discussed, the GMAT seems to test simple past, simple present, present perfect, past perfect. This is why we must get back to really focusing on the usage of these particular tenses now, the ones we're about to discuss. Okay, first of all, how do you form the perfect tense? The perfect tense is always had helping verb plus past participle. Okay, what am I writing? Have helping verb. Now, have helping verb plus past participle, this is the formation of the perfect tense. If you want to form the past perfect, you will use the past form of have, which is, of course, had. So, had plus past participle. So, had helping verb plus past participle. If you want to form the present perfect, you will use the present form of have. There are two present forms of have. So, has and have plus past participle. So, the past participle is constant over here. And finally, future perfect, will plus have plus past participle. So let's quickly summarize this. The perfect tenses always have a have helping verb plus the past participle. The past participle will always be there. The have will change depending on which tense you're looking at. If you're looking at the past perfect, it'll go to the past form of have. If you're looking at the present perfect, it'll be one of the present forms of have, has or have, depending on whether the subject is singular or plural. And finally, future perfect will be will plus have plus past participle. Future perfect is not that important. Let's focus on past and present perfect. But before we move on, are we comfortable with the formation of the perfect tenses, the past and the perfect? Quick check, yes or doubts? Okay, I see a few confirmations. Ujali, sure, not sure? Okay, excellent. Now let's put a couple of sentences up. I had a cup of tea. What tense is this? Okay, Ankit is saying simple past. Abhishek is saying past simple. Rahul is also saying simple past. Manu and Ujali, what do you think? Simple past, okay, okay. Ujali is also saying simple past. Good. Because the had over here is not a helping verb. That's the difference. It is the verb. It is the main verb. And there is no, past participle involved. It is just one verb, had. Now, if you say something like this, I had a cup of tea. Now, this sometimes throws people off, but this is past perfect. I had a cup of tea. Now, what's happening over here? It's not, I mean, sometimes it sounds weird, but what's happening over here is we do actually have a had as a helping verb. And then we have had past participle. So had is the past participle of have. So had is like saying I had eaten a pizza. I had eaten a pizza. I had ordered a cup of tea. Right? Had eaten, had, it's basically the same thing. This would be past perfect. Now let's discuss something very basic about the perfect tenses. As we've discussed earlier, perfect in English always means that you're pulling something back in terms of time from something else. So you're trying to say that something happened before something else. So perfect always means before. Now, past perfect would then mean something before something else in the past. So let's visualize this. Past perfect would mean perfect of the past. That means before the past. Present perfect would mean before the present. And future perfect will mean before the future. So something in the future before something in the even later future, like even farther future. So past perfect, something before something in the past. Present perfect, something before the present. And future perfect, something in the future before something in the later future. So that's what the perfect tenses basically can be visualized as. Now, if you want to use the past perfect, right? And this is something the GMAT has tested multiple times. Ideally, you would want some other time indicator. Either that other thing should be an action in the past, or it should be some sort of something which indicates some time which happened after the past perfect. What I mean by that is, if I just say I had a cup of tea, right? Or I had eaten a pizza, the sentence will be most likely wrong on the GMAT. Quick check. Are we comfortable with this? That I had a cup of tea is most likely wrong because there's nothing else after it? Okay, Ankit's confirmed. Abhishek's confirmed. Manu, Rahul. Rahul? Yeah, perfect. Good. Thank you. So, past perfect, if you use it in isolation, that is usually a warning that this is most likely not correct. Now, I keep saying most likely, because in English, sometimes that, and this can be very hard for students to accept sometimes. Sometimes the past time marker is not explicit. It is literally not explicitly included in the sentence. If you look in the sentence, you will not be able to find it. That sometimes complicates things. Um, but if you see a choice between the past perfect and let's say a simple past, and you have absolutely no reason to pull something back, right, from something else in the past, then use the past tense. That would be my advice to you. But if you're getting the impression that something happened, something else existed, whether that thing is mentioned in the sentence or not, you may have to use the past perfect. So let me be clear on this. In most cases, the GMAT's going to give you a nice way to decide whether, okay, look, do I need to pull this back or do I not need to pull this back? But in a few very rare cases, if you guys solve enough GMAT questions, you'll see what I mean. In some cases, the past perfect has been used without any explicit mention of anything in the later past. But again, let's not overemphasize that. It's just something you should be aware of. So let's summarize. What is the rule? If we use the past perfect without something else, that option is almost certainly wrong. If you want to be absolutely sure, look for other issues, but you would be relatively safe removing that option. All right. Uh, let's take a few examples. We believed that the contract had been awarded to another team within our company. So, in the first sentence, what you'll notice is the belief kept on happening even after the contract had been awarded. So, once the contract was awarded, the belief started, right? So, what happened first? The awarding happened first. Of course, it goes without saying that the physical order over here does not matter. It does not matter whether had been awarded is physically the second verb. What we want is whether it is the first in terms of time, as in actual time. So, physical order, which verb occurs first, is completely irrelevant. What is relevant is which one is actually happening first. All right, let's take a look at the next one. By midnight, the airline had cancelled almost all its flights. So, over here, you have two things. You have a time marker, midnight, and then you also have had been awarded is past perfect continuous? No. Abhishek had been, so past perfect continuous would be had been awarding. Remember, continuous always needs a present participle, the ing form. Yeah. So continuous always must have a present participle. In fact, that is the thing which helps you understand that it's a process, right? That ing itself is the thing that helps you understand that it's a process. I thought bin is used in perfect. Please unmute, just help me understand your question.
So I thought that been is always used in perfect continuous sentences. He has been doing.
Oh, okay. I I see your point, but what's happening here is we're actually looking at active and passive, right? Now, let's say that we are in the active, and this question is open to everyone. How would we say, had, like, how would we use that awarded word in the active voice? Please feel free to unmute. You don't have to type out a long sentence. But if you wanted to use awarded in the active voice, what would you do?
Was awarded.
That's what I was hoping to get to, but was awarded is the next step. So, for example, if you say, I was awarded something, right? Are you in the active? Are you the one performing the action?
No.
Right. So, if you are the one performing the action, what should you say?
Am awarded.
Have awarded? I'm sorry, did I hear you right? Have awarded?
Am. Am awarded.
Absolutely. You can say have awarded, right? So, you could say, I have awarded Ajitesh the title of most ancient person in the room, right? So you could say have awarded is you are the one who's doing the awarding, right? Okay,
Right.
now let's flip this. If you were to switch this to the passive voice, what would you get? And of course, this is open to everyone. I have awarded someone something. Ujali's type. Ujali, please feel free to unmute. Why are you guys not unmuting yourselves? Ew, are you guys really that fast at
Someone,
typing? Yeah,
someone
Ujali,
was
go ahead.
awarded. Someone was awarded something by me, or
Very good.
yeah,
Very good. But let me ask you a follow up question. What tense is was awarded?
was awarded. Mm. No, sorry, I missed the first 20 minutes. Maybe in
No
simple
problem.
past was awarded.
Yeah, that's absolutely
Mm.
correct. It's simple past. I awarded someone, simple past.
Mm.
I was awarded something by someone, simple past.
Mm.
Okay, all right. Now let's go back to Manu's present perfect. I have awarded someone. What is the passive of this?
I have awarded someone. Someone had been awarded by me.
Someone has been awarded by me, right? So you see that word been gets inserted automatically?
Yeah.
Perfect. Abhishek, so what we saw there is present perfect passive, right? But not continuous. Perfect. And the last step over here is to just switch to the past perfect. So, for example, if I say, I had awarded someone, right? The passive of that would be someone had been awarded by me. So, Abhishek, I think that answers your question. Fair enough. Good job, guys. So, I think you are able to manipulate these sentences properly. You're able to see the forms, which is great. But let's address a couple more issues and then we'll move on to the other concepts to be discussed in today's session. All right. So the sentence that we were talking about was by midnight, the airline had canceled almost all its flights. So what we said is the midnight, right? That phrase sets up a time marker. And it's saying the airline had canceled almost all its flights. You can think of it like this before midnight, right? The third one, the car did not run well as its engine had not been maintained well. Okay, fair enough. The car did not run well because, before that time, its engine had not been maintained. So that's one way to look at this. Now, a quick point about the past perfect. If you use the words before and after, then the past perfect. So, why would anyone even use the past perfect? See, this is the most important reason to use the past perfect is when you think that the person who's reading or who's listening to you will not be able to accurately identify the sequence of events, That is the most important reason to use the past perfect. When you want to establish that something happened before something else, or you feel that the reader needs help to establish. But if you use the words before and after, your reader doesn't need any help to establish the sequence of events. So, for example, if you say, I, before I left for my office, I had eaten a pizza, right? Let me write that out. Before I left for my office, I had eaten a pizza. Now, over here, your reader does not need any help from you, any additional help to understand that the eating of the pizza happened before you left for your office. So, before I left for my office, you can just say, I ate a pizza. That's it. There's no particular reason to use the past perfect over here. Your reader gets it that the eating of the pizza happened before leaving for the office. Okay, Manu may have had a question, but possibly does not have it now. Fair enough. So, if you have something that establishes the sequence, like before or after, right, and your reader does not need help to do that, then there's absolutely no need to use the past perfect. All right, now let me get rid of all my writing over here. Let's move on to the present perfect. Right. Yes, Abhishek. So both are correct. And I don't think the GMAT will test you on this, but the point is sometimes when people see the word before or after, they think that, oh, I must have the past perfect. So all we're saying right now is you don't necessarily need to have it. So you should not remove an option just because it does not have the past perfect with before or after. So yeah, this is more of a defensive concept rather than something that's actively used to remove options. All right, let's move to the second last one, present perfect. Now the present perfect, I want you to look at it like this. The present perfect can be used for something that started in the past and has been going on till now, right? You have absolutely no idea about the future, but at least as of now, it's still true or it's still happening. That's one way to use the present perfect. Another way to use the present perfect is something that happened in the past and it is over. In other words, it can be used like the past tense. So there are two ways to use the present perfect. Something started in the past and has been going on till now. Or it can be used for something that happened in the past and is in the past. It is not touching the present. Now let's take a look at the first one. The price of solar panels has fallen in the last 2 years. So what are you doing? You're talking about the time period from -2 till now. So -2 years till now. Another example, she has worked. So I'll just take the second example. She has worked in finance since 2019. Now take a look at the sentence. Tell me what this means. Of course, please unmute. I don't want you to type this much. What does this
Uh,
sentence mean?
she continues to work in finance. I mean, since 2019, she's been working in finance.
That is absolutely correct. So she's been working in finance and she's still there, right? Perfect. So starting 2019 till now, she's basically in finance in that sector. Now, before we move on, just a quick look at this word since. You know, since can be used in a couple of ways. Since can be used to provide the reason for something, or it can be used in a time sense. If you are looking at the time since, you must be using a perfect tense. It has to happen. And in every question that the GMAT has tested this till now, right, the correct answer uses the perfect, present perfect. But I'm not going to tell you that, hey, look, anytime you see the word since, your correct option must have the present perfect. I'm not going to say that. Instead, what I'm going to say is it must have the perfect tense, like a perfect tense. It has to happen. Most likely, present perfect. But I don't want you to assume that the correct answer will always be present perfect. So let me give you an example of what I mean over here. She has worked in finance since 2019 versus she worked in finance since 2019. So literally, the GMAT can give you two options like this. Tell me whether you're comfortable saying that the second one is dead wrong, as in it's impossible. The second one is, of course, simple past. Take your time, go through both of these. And of course, if you have a doubt, please do unmute. She has worked in finance since 2019. She worked in finance since 2019. Okay, Rahul is confirming. Take your time. This is something that has been tested multiple times. So let's be absolutely sure about this. The shortcut is that if you want to use the word since, right? If you're using the word since, the shortcut is that the correct answer will be present perfect. But the better way is to say that it'll definitely be perfect and most likely will be present perfect. Okay, Rahul and Ujali have confirmed. Ankit, Abhishek, Abhishek's confirmed. Ankit and Manu, any doubts? Manu's confirmed.
So
Ankit, yeah.
this means second one is absolutely wrong, right? Because since has to have that perfect tense.
Just say that again. The second one is absolutely wrong.
Because the since has to have the perfect tense in it.
That is, yes, that is the correct way of looking at it. The second one is absolutely wrong. You must remove any option that does this.
Okay.
Yeah,
But so
Manu, go ahead.
if since is being used in the context of a reason,
Mhm.
does it still have to be in the present perfect tense?
No. So this rule applies only if you have the time since, not the
Okay.
because since.
Okay.
Awesome. Now, the next one that we were discussing is that the simple uh, past, right? It's like the present perfect can be used as a substitute for the simple past. Now, although that can happen, right? And how do some people think about it? They think about it as you are talking about something in the past that is relevant now, right? So when you study the present perfect, you will many times see this said that this is something that happened in the past but is of relevance now. In our classes, we don't get into that level of detail at all because, I mean, it's not a level of detail, it's actually a pretty contentious point. So we don't get into that debate as such. Instead, we just focus on what the GMAT has done in the past. And the GMAT has tested this specific point that although your present perfect can be used to talk about something that happened in the past, that means something that is over, it is not touching the present. Although it can be done, you cannot be super specific about the time. So, she has worked in finance. Take a look at that sentence. Let me just quickly draw a box around it. She has worked in finance. The sentence can be used even if she's not currently in finance. She might be working in consulting for all we know, right? Like now she may be in consulting or somewhere else. But she has worked in you can tell someone, hey, look, I've worked in IT. I've worked in finance, right? I've worked in finance in the past. But what is in the past? In the past is a super vague reference to the time frame, right? What you cannot do is you cannot be super precise and say, I have worked in finance in 2019. So just take a second, make sure you're comfortable with this. If your present perfect is being used to refer to a specific time in the past, it cannot be correct. It must be something that started in the past and is true till now, but it cannot be for a completed time in the past. Specified completed time in the past, not possible. Present perfect will never be correct. I'm not sure how well I've explained this. Let me quickly check with
Can you
all of
go
you.
over this again, please?
Absolutely. So I want you to think about a couple of terms. Right? Let me just create some white space over here. I want you to think about these two terms: open-ended time interval
Mm-hmm.
and closed time interval.
Okay.
And the way to understand these two is like
Mm-hmm.
this. Open-ended means you're starting from a specific point, right? But on the right-hand side, it's open. That is, in the future,
Yeah.
it may continue, may not continue. I have no idea, basically. It's touching the
Mm-hmm.
present. Closed means it's completely closed off.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it was just once or it went on but is over, right? So
Mm.
open-ended means on the right-hand side, there is the possibility of continuation, right?
Right.
Closed means there is no possibility of continuation because you're looking at something that is completely done and over,
Mm-hmm.
right? Perfect. Now, present perfect can be used for something that is open-ended and specified. This is why you can say, I have worked in finance since. So I have worked in finance since 2016 or 2019, whatever, right? So
Mm.
why? Because since 2019 is an open-ended time interval,
Right.
right? Now, can the present perfect be used for a closed time interval? Yes, it can. But if you do that, you cannot specify the time. That's all. So for a closed time interval, what would we say? I worked in finance in 2016. Full stop. I worked in finance because now you've used the past tense.
Why are we saying 2016?
Anything? 2019? I mean, it just
No,
has to
but
be in the
why are we
past.
saying no, but
Think about it. If you want to
didn't we
specify
just
the
say that
time, no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
didn't we just say that we shouldn't mention the time?
Oh, right now I'm using the past tense, not the present perfect.
Oh yeah, right, right. I worked in finance in
Mhm.
2019. Okay.
Okay.
And if I
Mhm.
had to use the perfect way, what would it become? I have worked in finance in
Yeah.
2019. Yeah, that okay.
Okay. So
You're
if
saying
you
that would be
want,
wrong.
yeah, the last one would be wrong.
Hmm.
So if you want to use the present perfect as a substitute for the past tense, right, you can't be super specific about the timing. So
Okay.
you could say, I have worked in finance, and that's still fine. But you cannot take that last step and say, I have worked in finance in 2019. This one is wrong. So with the present perfect, you can specify an open-ended time interval, but with the present perfect, you cannot specify a closed time interval.
Okay.
Okay. You can use the present perfect to talk about something that's done, but you can't specify the time then. That's all. That's the only condition of that. If you want to specify the time, you have to switch to a different tense, like the past perfect or the simple past. Okay. Better?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Now, let's take a look at future perfect. This is not, again, you can kind of switch off if you want. The future perfect is not important, but it's so easy to understand that, we may as well just go through it. So what did we discuss? The future perfect is basically for something in the future that is before something in the later future, like after it, because all the perfect tenses are always about something before something else. So future perfect. This will be future perfect. Let's take an example. They will have completed the redesign before the client complains. right? So the client is going to complain in the future, and the redesign process will have been completed before that thing in the later future happens. So this is how the future perfect is used. Another example, he will have taken an it's the same type of thing. So it's the same idea. So something in the future before something in the later future. Quick check, is everyone comfortable with this? Let me have a yes, or of course, if you have doubts, please let me know. Okay, couple of confirmations. Manu, possibly Rahul also. Ujali?
I understand the first one, which is
Mhm.
there are two actions in the future, but one will get completed before the other.
Mhm.
But I don't understand the duration up to a time in future.
1 second. So a duration up to a time. Yeah, I don't think I have an example for that over here.
Oh, okay, okay.
Uh,
Okay, I
yeah,
was
I
just
think both of these are just for the first one.
okay.
All right. Now let's switch out of tenses and head to a couple of things that are very easy to apply. It's just basically that we'll have to memorize them. Now, sometimes people study the concept we're about to do now under different names, right? As with everything else in our classes, we'll study it under its proper name. And the advantage of studying it under its proper name is you can always find it in other resources. So one of the things that I don't like is when GMAT prep companies use their own made up terms for, concepts, because after that you have no way of expanding your knowledge. So over here, we're doing something called the subjunctive. Now, within the subjunctive, there are mandative subjunctives and there are hypothetical subjunctives. Let's start with mandative. Mandative basically means you are mandating something. You want something to happen. You desire something to happen. You order something to happen, right?
Sorry, 1 second. What are
Mhm.
subjunctives
It's just a name. It's just a name of
for?
a thing. So to express certain, let's say, intentions when you are speaking. So let's say your intention is to express an order. You would use a specific subjunctive over there.
Okay, so subjunctives are words that express intentions
Yeah, I mean, there are different types of
or
subjunctives. We're
phrases.
discussing
Okay,
something called the mandative subjunctive.
okay.
Remember, this the word subjunctive is just so that you can extend your knowledge later. It's
Mm-hmm.
not 100% necessary for you to remember that term if you don't want to.
Verbs. Okay. No, mandatives. Sorry.
All right. Now we've got mandative verbs. We're starting off with mandative verbs. Let me pick what's the first one we have over here? Request. Yeah, or require. Either is fine. Now let's start with require. If I say I require you to solve 10 SC questions, right? Now over here, what is the verb? I'm 100% sure that you guys can identify it, but I just want to be sure. Absolutely sure. But what's the verb over here? Require. Got it. Very good. Voice is breaking. Okay, guys, just quick check. Are we able to hear me clearly, or are we? Okay, it's fine. Okay, got it. Got it. All right. Yeah. So sorry about that, Ankit. As I said, it happens intermittently. It's just completely random. I require you to solve 10 SC questions. Very nice to hear everyone confirm that the verb is require. To solve is not a verb, it's an infinitive, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So some of these mandative verbs, now what are mandative verbs? That express a desire, that you want something to happen, right? Some of them can be completed with infinitives. And that's very, very easy for us to know what the form of the verb will be. I know that none of you is ever going to say, I require you to solves, or I require you to solved 10 SC questions, right? You're never going to make a mistake if your verb is taking the infinitive. But the point is, some mandative verbs can also take that dependent clauses instead of infinitives. So, for example, if I say I require that, I require that. Now, instead of saying I require, remember, require to is also absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it at all. All we're saying is require that is also possible. Now, when you use require that, the verb inside the require that clause, so the verb inside the that clause, right, will take the plain form. So you take the plain is also the, like, some people call it the simplest form. So you just take that same plain form that you used with the infinitive and you just plug it in here. I require that you solve 10 questions. Now, this probably sounds absolutely fine. The problem comes in when you have a singular. What happens if I say I require that he/she, right? Either of these. I require that he solve 10 questions. I require that she solve 10 questions. That's my question to you. The sentence is correct, but does it sound okay? Let me know. Sounds okay or not okay? Are you leaning towards she solves 10 questions? Do you want solves to be there? Or do you think this is fine? Okay, Ankit saying
It
it
was
doesn't.
fine.
It sounds okay?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Uh, Ankit is not sure. Manu is saying it's fine. Rahul saying, yeah, Abhishek is fine. Fair enough. This just depends on whether you've heard it before or not, right? If you've not really come
Mhm.
across it before, it'll sound really weird. And to be honest, in my everyday usage, I don't apply this rule. Okay, so I don't follow this rule. But Ankit, what we'll do is when we have a situation like this on the GMAT, we will try to apply this rule. So if you see these verbs, right, like command, demand, desire, insist, mandate, order, propose, and you see a that clause after one of these verbs, within the that clause, make sure that your verb is that simplest form, the one that comes after to, right? So obviously you will not actually have a to over there, but you will need the form that comes after to. All right, Ankit's confirmed. Good. Now let's take a look at these two examples. She requests that he make the slide deck. Normally with he, what would you say? Makes. You would not normally say make with he. But your normal rules go out of the window. Here you need the plain form, the so-called simplest form. So she requires that he make the slide deck. I think we're comfortable with the first one, but the second one is a mistake. I basically want you guys to fix that mistake. Please tell me what is the correct form of the second one. Okay, I've got 3 answers over there. Very good. So basically, what we need is the infinitive form, right? She requires that he, and then we have a blank there. Now, over here, all we need to do is ask ourselves, what is the form that fits after to? That will be the plain form. I mean, that is literally the definition of the infinitive form, right? The one that comes after to. She requires that he, and would I say is? To is? Can I say to is? I can't. Can I say to was? No. Can I say to will be? No. The only thing I can say is be. To be. I can't say to will be, to was, to is. I can only say to be. So be is the form that I want to plug back in over here. She requires that he be there. Quick check. Ujali and Rahul. Does this sound okay? Rahul's confirmed.
Yeah.
Ujali? Perfect. All right. Now, the same thing applies to certain adjectives as well. So, these are called mandative adjectives. Let's take an example. Oh, sorry, the example's already there. Let's just look at that example. It is vital. It is critical. It is crucial. It is essential. It is imperative. It is important. It is important that he, and now you apply the same rule. It is important that he make the slide deck, not it's important that he makes the slide deck. Quick check. Is everyone comfortable with this?
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, please, Ankit.
I just wanted to ask in mandated adjectives, these eight that you mentioned are these only the ones which are
Oh,
mandated
no.
adjectives?
No. There will be more. Sorry, I should have made that clearer. You're right. I should have made that clearer. These are some mandative verbs, some mandative adjectives. There must
But,
be others.
but then in the exam, how to identify that is a mandated adjective or not? Because if we don't do that, because after that clause we will have that plain form. We require that plain form, right? So if we don't identify that it is a mandated adjective, then we will make the
That's
mistake the makes.
That's an excellent question. And when designing this class, I had to actually leave that part out. So we had that discussion. So when I created the content, there are multiple like finer points that we sometimes discuss that we may not always get time to discuss in our classes. I mean, if we want to finish within 5-6 weeks. Um, that question is important, right? The reason I decided not to address it is that it very rarely becomes an issue. So, what you're asking is a valid question. Sometimes, in very rare circumstances, it can be problematic. But in most cases, you most likely will not be asked about it. But now that you've brought it up, let's just discuss it. Um, Let me give you an example where you will struggle to see whether something is a desire or order. Um, yeah, I'm going to use the verb suggest, the last one that you see over there, the absolute last one. And I'm going to use it in a couple of sentences. She suggested that he was at the scene of the crime. Another sentence. She suggested that he be at the scene of the crime. Oh, hold on. Why am I saying that you may struggle? Let me just ask you. Check, read the two sentences. Let me know whether you can identify the one that is a mandative and the one that is not a mandative.
The second one is the mandative.
Yeah, okay, good. I thought maybe this would be a little difficult, but it's not apparently. What is the first one then?
It is the simple after that clause.
Yeah, it's a statement of reality, right? It's a statement of actual fact.
Yeah.
She suggested that he was at the scene of the crime means maybe she's a witness or something, and she's saying, yeah, I think he was at the scene of the crime, right? The second one is where she's actually asking him to do something, right? This means that even with the limited list of words that we have, right? And when I say limited, please note it's not very limited, it's actually quite good. Uh, Even with that list, sometimes you may find yourself in situations where you don't actually want to apply the mandative. You must do a quick sanity check and ask, does the sentence even need me to say that someone wants something to be done? And then only apply the rule that we're talking about.
Okay.
Okay. So, yes, the list is not complete, but there is I always have to strike a balance between giving you guys everything and giving you enough to cover most cases.
Okay.
All right. Now, the final point with mandatives is if you combine a mandative with the word should, you end up with something that's grammatically correct, but it's not required. Now, there are 2 points we need to discuss here. And the first thing we need to discuss is the word should itself. Again, unfortunately, in the GMAT prep world, some people have come up with this weird rule where they say that the word should always means some kind of moral obligation or duty. That is, again, just super absurd. You can't just take a word in English and say that, oh, it has only one meaning on the GMAT. How? That's like saying since can only mean because on the GMAT. I mean, since cannot mean because on the GMAT. It's so absurd that I can't even explain to you how absurd it is. Um, should has multiple meanings. One of the meanings of should is some sort of you want someone to do something, which is literally the mandative that we're discussing. If you say he should be at this crime scene, right? You could be saying that you want him there, or you could be saying there is a probability that he'll be there. Let me just quickly check with all of you guys. If I say he should be at the crime scene, are you comfortable seeing that this sentence can mean two things? That he should be there or he should be there, right? Like a probability. Okay, I've got 3 yeses on this. Manu, Ankit, I'm sorry, Abhishek. Okay, Abhishek, not sure. You can always unmute, please remember. Oh, okay, sorry. So yeah, the basic point we're discussing over here is should can mean that you want someone to do something, and if that happens, you should not combine it with another mandative. So if you say he demands that we should make the slide deck, right? This is a level 3 error. You can say he demands that we make the slide deck, and that is enough. Or you can say, he said that we should make the slide deck. That is also enough. You don't have to combine a mandative with a should. It's not grammatically incorrect, but it is a level 3 error. Abhishek, is this okay? Excellent. All right, next up, hypothetical subjunctives. Hypothetical subjunctives are a way to let the audience know that you're talking about a situation that you don't think will happen. Let me be clear about that part before we discuss anything else. That you don't think will happen. Sometimes people look at the hypothetical subjunctive and they say, oh, I'm talking about things that are objectively not true. That's not correct. It's all subjective. Let's take an example. If I become the prime minister, I will reduce taxes. Full stop. Now, let's go through step by step. If I become is present tense. I will reduce is future tense. Now, what if I say if I became the prime minister, which is past tense, I would reduce taxes, which looks like past tense. Say these two sentences to yourselves. Ask yourself, what is the first one telling me? What is the second one telling me? How are they different? Of course, I will give you the answer in just a couple of minutes, but first I want you to think about it so that you can get some practice looking at the meanings of these sentences.
Reduce taxes.
Abhishek is saying the first one is correct. Abhishek, both are correct. They just mean different things. Let me ask this another way. Which one would you say? Yeah, Jali, go ahead.
No, I think the first one means that,
Mhm.
if I do this in the future, like if I become PM in the future, like
Mhm.
if this were to be me in some point in the future, I
Mhm.
will do this.
Mhm.
And the second one is saying, like, if I was this person, this is what I would do.
I think you've got it. Fair enough. Now, Manu, remember you used that word uncertain, right? Uncertain is a more inaccurate way to say hypothetical. Hypothetical or counterfactual or imaginary. Okay, now let me give you a little bit of additional information, and then one of these sentences will suddenly become correct and the other one will become incorrect. I am a GMAT instructor. As of now, I have absolutely zero plans to become a politician, which means I have no plans to become the prime minister. I do not ever see myself becoming the prime minister ever. Which one of these two is correct? Okay, we've got an answer from Rahul. You got an answer from Ujali. Abhishek is going for the first one. Ankit is saying both are correct. I'm interested in seeing what Manu's. Fair enough. I think we'll have to work harder on getting that would word under control. Fair enough. Guys, the second one is correct. If I became the prime minister, I would reduce taxes. This usage, what you're looking at, this so-called hypothetical, imaginary, counterfactual, what some people say uncertain. Uncertain is not the right word. Remember, counterfactual, hypothetical, imaginary. These words mean that the person making the statement thinks that the probability of that thing is zero. It is not talking about objective reality. Like right now, I might think that, yeah, there's no way I'm going to shift out of the GMAT field. I've been here for 12 years. This is where my expertise is. Why should I get out of this? Right? I'm not going to become a politician. As of now, at the time of making the statement, the person making the statement thinks that the probability that he will become the prime minister is zero. That means he or she is exploring a hypothetical situation, something that they feel is contrary to actual reality, right? They don't think this is ever going to happen. If I became the prime minister, I would reduce taxes. On the other hand, if you think that you can become the prime minister, if you think the probability is non-zero, the first sentence is what you say. If I become the prime minister, I will do this. Not if I become the prime minister, I would do this. Or if I became the prime minister, I will do this. No, you don't mix the two up. You just say, if I become the prime minister, I will do this. Or if you're not sure about, okay, now this is where the uncertain actually comes in. If you are sure that you have a shot at becoming the prime minister, the probability is more than zero, but you are not sure that you will reduce taxes, you will say, I may reduce taxes. If I become the prime minister, I will reduce taxes is 100% certain. You think that if you become the prime minister, you will do this. If you're not certain that you will do that, then you say, I may do it. Or you could say, I can reduce taxes. But you don't say, I will reduce taxes. That's how you show uncertainty. Manu, is this slightly better?
Yeah.
Awesome. So that would word, right, that people say is uncertain is actually, it's better to say the would word is an indicator that you may be looking at a hypothetical situation, not an uncertain situation, a hypothetical situation, or a counterfactual or imaginary situation. That's the better way to look at that word. All right, now let's take a look at examples. Hang on, first let me confirm. Ankit and Abhishek, please feel free to unmute, but we must make sure that you're relatively comfortable with this before we move on to the other examples.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, guys. Now let's move on to the other examples. Let's take them quickly. But we'll also recognize, because in English, this hypothetical form, right? It sometimes looks like the past form, and I have an example of that. I'll show it to you in just a second. Now, the first example over here says, "If I was late, I apologized." Let me just make this slightly bigger. Yeah. If I was late, I apologized. If I was late, I apologized is a real past conditional. It means whenever I was late, I apologized. Right? Unfortunately, the second one is also possible. If I was late, I would apologize. So what you see on the left and right hand side are both past tenses. This is possible. The third one is hypothetical. If I had been late, I would have apologized. Now, when you read the sentence, if I had been late, I would have apologized, you'd probably get the feeling that, yeah, he wasn't late, but he's talking about a situation in which, if he had been late, he would have apologized, right? He's trying to explore a past counterfactual conditional situation. Quick check. Are we comfortable with the third one? Excellent. Ujali?
I'm comfortable with the third one. I'm not very comfortable with the first one.
So let's say if I was called, I answered, right?
So every time that you were called, you answered.
Exactly. That's it.
Okay. So each time
That's
that
all.
I was late, I apologized.
Yeah, you've got it. Absolutely. Now, the one that we're interested in is actually the last one
Yeah. No,
and the
that
one
that
before
that
that.
is fine. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
This one.
Yeah, so both of these. Now, in the future, right, if you want to talk about something that you feel can happen, then on the left hand side, normally you see the present tense. On the right hand side, you normally see the future tense. If I am late, I will apologize. So, for example, let's say you have a meeting 2 weeks later. You can say, okay, look, 2 weeks later, if I'm late, I'll apologize. Right? You can say that for something that's 2 weeks later. But if you think that there is no chance that you will be late, right, what you will say is, if I were late, I would apologize. But I won't be. That's what you're trying to say. Let me give you another example. If Virat were injured, India would lose. Whatever, the match or whatever. If Virat were injured means he is not actually injured. But you are exploring an imaginary situation in which he's injured, right? So the way to show that is with something that is past, right? And past on both sides. So the right hand side also looks like the past tense. The left hand side is the past tense. Let me check. Is everyone comfortable with? Oh, sorry. One last thing. Out of all your be forms, right? Is, am, are, was, were, etc., etc. Basically, you cannot use was in the hypothetical future. So, you know, if you don't say if Virat was injured, India would lose, because that suddenly becomes a real conditional. It is no longer a hypothetical, it's a real. It means whenever Virat was injured, India would lose. But if we say if Virat were injured, what you mean is this is like a way of showing that Virat's not actually injured, but if he were, India would lose the match. Okay, quick check. Is everyone comfortable with this?
Hello.
Yeah,
Sir,
yeah.
if you say for a real condition that if Virat is injured, say for example, if Virat is injured, then India would lose or will lose. Both are fine.
So, what is your intended meaning? Is he actually injured or is he not actually injured?
If Virat is injured, say if he say is he
No,
really
no,
is
no,
injured?
no, no. Don't worry about the form. Tell me
Hmm.
whether he is really injured or not injured. Are you
He's
imaginary or real over here?
real, real.
Real. Now you can say if Virat is injured, right? Let me write this out. If Virat is injured, and now you have two choices. So, firstly, you've established that this is a real conditional statement,
Hmm.
right? Because you've gone for the present tense, you've not gone for the past tense on the left hand side. Now, on the right hand side, you have two options. Either you can go with present or you can go with future. You can say, if Virat is injured, India loses its matches. Or India loses, that's all. You don't have to say anything else. India loses. Or you can say, if Virat is injured, India will lose. If you are talking about, let's say, tomorrow's match. Or, in fact, I think there is a match today also. I'm just saying, imagine. You're talking about tomorrow's match, or day after tomorrow's match, or 1 week later, right? So if Virat is injured, India loses. That means whenever Virat is injured, India loses. A simpler way of looking at this is if Virat plays, India wins.
Hmm.
India wins versus India will win. Wins means it's a general statement that whenever he plays, India wins. The next one is a prediction that if he plays in some future match, India will win that future match.
Hmm.
Okay, better?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And if we say from the real perspective that if Virat was injured, then we will say India would lose.
Yeah. So you can say if Virat was injured, India lost all its matches. Or you can say if Virat was injured, India would lose all its matches to talk about the past.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Now let's go for the last one, which is active passive voice. Active passive is actually very easy. We've discussed it so many times, but we must make sure that we cover this in a session so that if you later come back to it, you can always find it in case you need to. Now, this is a very quick 5-minute discussion, but let's go through it. Firstly, remember active passive is not something you apply randomly. You don't just look at something and say, hey, that sounds very active or that sounds very passive. No, active and passive are technical terms, they have meanings. First of all, they are applicable or they are relevant only when you have an action. You have someone performing an action and someone receiving an action, right? Otherwise, there is no question of active and passive, right? So, for example, if I say he is happy, you cannot look at this sentence and say, oh, active. No, it's not active because is a linking verb. There is no action happening here at all, right? No one's performing an action, nothing is receiving an action, there's no action. So there's no question of active and passive in this sort of case. So when do you have active and passive? When you have an action, a doer, and a recipient of the action. When the doer is the subject, that is active, right? For example, we solved the question. And when the subject receives the action, that is passive. The question was solved by us. Now, generally speaking, American English is biased towards the active voice for reasons that are not totally clear. It's just a pattern which started emerging sometime in the 1920s or 30s. Hey, that part is not important for you. The point is, active is generally preferred on the GMAT. But remember, it does not mean that the passive is wrong. And in fact, there are certain cases in which the passive would, in fact, be preferable. That happens when you don't know who did something or the person doing it is not important. A very famous example of this is a sentence like this: the bank was robbed. Right? Now, either you don't know who robbed the bank or the main idea that you're trying to say is the bank was robbed. Right? So the passive could absolutely be used when the doer is not as important as the recipient of the action or when the doer is unknown. So there are cases when the passive is actually better, but I have never seen the GMAT test you on this, although they have tested us on just a direct active versus passive preference. So that is the maximum that I have seen till now. Active is generally preferred to passive. Beyond that, whether passive is actually better in certain constructions, I don't think they try to test you on this, but you can keep it in mind if you want to. All right, quick check. Is everyone comfortable with this as well? Ankit's confirmed. Manu's confirmed. Rahul, Ujali. Uh,
I'm
Go ahead.
comfortable with this. I just want to discuss the last 2 points. So it's a level 3 thing if you have a direct active versus passive. But in that case, would we then have to evaluate if we know if that the door is important or known or not?
So I honestly don't know because I've never seen a GMAT question that's tested us on that last point.
Okay.
I think you can deprioritize it. So we don't know how they would approach this issue. But personally speaking, I would. Would I actually try to take a call on this or not? I'm just thinking. I've never had to.
Because like I understand it as a point, but then what do you like? What I'm just trying to understand. What do you do with the points? Do you
I
actually
know
evaluate it or
that's what I'm also thinking about. What would I do? Um, so generally speaking, I don't normally focus on level 3 too much. For me, it's not a big deal. What I would probably do is I would definitely look for level 1 and 2. Like that's always the case.
not? Got
Right?
it.
You never prioritize level 3 over level 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of cases where the passive will be better than the active, I'm just trying to think of
Probably
that.
very few.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would not have any GMAT specific insight into this.
Got it. Got it. That's
Generally speaking, just remember active is preferred to passive, and they have tested that in multiple cases.
okay.
Awesome.